3.
Dyslexia affects my family. I have 3 teen sons who are dyslexic. Imagine my surprise when, as I was browsing the internet looking for information on dyslexia, I came across claims that Steve Jobs, founder of Apple, is dyslexic. I could not find proof of this, but it was a claim that was made often. Research shows that dyslexia may be more prevalent than first suspected because it is genetic and the most common neurodevelopmental disorder. Before we begin, we need to define dyslexia. According to Dyslexia An Overview, Wahainen and Naidu define dyslexia as a mild neurological disorder that causes a deficit affecting an individual's ability to interpret the symbols of written language, and it is independent of intelligence. This means that a person who is dyslexic struggles with reading and often writing, but it does not mean that the person who is struggling has low intelligence. Now that dyslexia is defined, let's start with the fact that dyslexia is genetic. According to Carrion Castillo, Frank, and Fisher, researchers have found up to 14 different genes associated with dyslexia so far. This visual aid by Fisher and DeFries shows 5 of the different chromosomes found to be associated with dyslexia. The chromosomes are 2, 3, 6, 15, and 18. These red lines are areas that have been found to be associated with those who are dyslexic, and these are the areas that are different in those that are dyslexic than those without dyslexia. There is still plenty of research needing to be done on the genetics of dyslexia and how these different markers play into the diagnosing of dyslexia. In Genetics of Dyslexia, the Evolving Landscape, Schumacher, Hoffman, Schmal, Schultz, Korn, and Nothen tell us that a child who has affected parents has a risk of 40 to 60% of developing dyslexia. They also tell us that if there are other family members who are affected by dyslexia, this percentage goes up. This means that a child who has parents and other family members who are dyslexic have over a 60% chance of being dyslexic as well. Though dyslexia is genetic, Wahainen and Naidu point out that dyslexia, even though it is often inherited, it can also exist without a family history of dyslexia. Someone can be dyslexic even if there is no relatives that have been diagnosed so far. Now we are going to explore the fact that dyslexia is one of the most common neurodevelopmental disorders. In Dyslexia An Overview, Wahainen and Naidu tell us that dyslexia is a neurodevelopmental disorder. In 2007's Genetics of Dyslexia, the Evolving Landscape, Schumacher, Hoffman, Schmal, Schultz, Korn, and Nothen say that dyslexia was considered among the most common neurodevelopmental disorders with a prevalence of 5 to 12%. Note that the 5 to 12% was from 2007, which was 9 years ago. In 2010, Learning Disabilities Association of America's Minnesota branch published their Learning Times newsletter and stated that the numbers of dyslexic people had risen to 15 to 20%, or 1 in 5, of the U.S. population. The Population Reference Bureau data sheet, updated in August of 2016, states that there are 324 million people in the U.S. 20% of that population is 64.8 million people. Therefore, there are approximately 64.8 million people in the U.S. affected by dyslexia. This was 3 years ago from the 2007 Dyslexia An Overview that was mentioned a moment ago. The research has shown that more people were affected than first thought. Looking at that data, one can only conclude that with 64.8 million people affected in the U.S. by dyslexia, it is a prominent and common neurodevelopmental disorder. We just looked at 2 facts about dyslexia. The first was that dyslexia is genetic, and the second is that dyslexia is one of the most common neurodevelopmental disorders. Looking at the research, we see that dyslexia is more common than it was first suspected. Researchers are still researching on the genetics of dyslexia. This gives hope that one day dyslexia may be detected sooner rather than later.